like, share, subscribe. We know where you live.
They're climbing in your windows. They're snatching your people up. Y'all don't know nothing about that, do you?
No,
Go look at YouTube. You'll find it. Hide your kids, hide your wife, and like, share, and subscribe to Red and Black here on the Red State Channel.
Do it right now. I'm watching you right now. Hit that subscribe button. Hit it. I'm watching you. Do it.
We gonna find you. We gonna find you.
Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and come be a part of our family and part of the solutions. And let's make America great.
Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, of course, your head Democrat in charge here on the fully conservative Red and Black, where we as lifelong Democrats sit here and pontificate because we done be living on the plantation. You know, if you all had an opportunity to follow any of that monkey shine that was going on social media over the last couple of days, you kind of have an understanding of what I'm talking about. If you don't look, because, you know, there's two signs you should always follow. Don't feed the animals at the zoo, and don't feed the trolls in social media, especially if they may not even be real people. Dr. Metzler, speaking of real, you kept it 100 or 100, as the kids say, and I'm too old to be a kid, by showing us that you at the island and you chilling and you got more money than like all of us combined, which just makes us look bad. So go ahead and tell us how much better your life is than the rest of ours real quick before I go on to another person.
Well, you know, of course, I'm very inclusive, Big 10. So my life is great. Everyone's life is great, except I'm just kind of chilling on my island. You know, that's all. There you go.
And you know it's a real island, because if he was on a fake set, he'd have a fake coconut with a fake straw in it.
Right.
Like, this is really good. But people that are really on islands don't have to do that because they're on an island.
You're on an island.
Now, somebody that missed the boat, because you can see he's dressed for the trip, but when people say you got to be there at 7 o'clock, Jeff Charles, or else you're going to get you behind left, you learn the hard way. I see that you're matching Dr. Metzler, but you missed the boat. What say you?
I was too busy on the plantation, apparently, because I'm on the Democrat plantation. I'm over here like, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Donald Trump is going to carry me home.
Sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Yeah, I'm doing great. I wish I was with Dr. Metzler right now, because we would be matching and we'd probably be drinking whatever beer he mentioned and hanging out.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
There.
Garrett, yeah, that guy.
Yes, that's it.
Priscilla Ron, you who is so much of a lifelong Democrat that doesn't believe in the conservative and free market way of life here in America, that hung out with everybody from Betsy DeVos to other folks over the last 24 hours. Again, what say you?
Well, I know that if Jeff had made that plain, that there might be some people confusing the two of them for each other, kind of like what we talked about before we were rolling. So I'm glad there's not going to be any confusion, but it has been a wonderful 24 hours meeting with other amazing conservatives like Dr. West and all of these, you know, Mr. Walsh was talking about education. I mean, it's been great. I can't wait to go back later today.
Fantastic. So, and I'm going to touch upon it briefly. I think we'll make it another bonus episode, because I don't want to confound that with the other news of the week, because we had a big story on guns. You had another mass shooting. You're seeing more and more of the false narratives coming out of Uvalde. You're hearing about the politics around that. And we won't even get into some of the other items that we have, including the public hearing that apparently is going to be in prime time, still talking about January 6th. And I think they finally resolved what's going on in Pennsylvania with the U.S. Senate primary with Dr. Oz, where you have another made-for-television event between a TV host and a cartoon character running for Senate. He's not really a cartoon character, but you get my point. Anybody that's bragging more about their tattoos than about their legislative record as lieutenant governor, we're living in a little bit of fantasy land. I'm sure that comment's going to come back to bite me in about 2 to 4 years, but I digress. It is what it is. But let's go into the Black Republicanism just a moment, because we did get a lot of feedback online about that, less about the trolling, more about people talking about the value of that conversation, particularly in 2022, particularly with some of the candidates that are running, and the fact that, Dr. Metz, I'm going to start with you first because you're the historian here. We've been seeing these waves over time. I mean, there was a wave in 2006 with Michael Steele running for the U.S. Senate and Lynn Swan running for governor in Pennsylvania, and some other things going on. You've had a wave in 2010 after President Obama became 44th president of the United States, and then this wave of Black Republicanism with all the Black Republican vice chairs, people such as Priscilla Ron and her predecessor across the country, and then a bunch of candidates then. And now you're coming into 2022. One of the things we heard about Dr. Metzer was this is a valuable conversation because Black Republicans do need to push culturally, politically, from a policy standpoint, and from an economic standpoint. What are people craving when it comes to that aspect of American politics that maybe we touched upon last week and maybe touched upon more this year?
Well, I think people are craving a couple of things. I mean, one of the things that I think people are craving is this need to really be clear as to how you can be both Black, conservative, Republican. But so here's part of the problem, though. In a lot of cases, there are still too many people who say, well, why do you have to say that you're a Black Republican? Why do you have to say that you're a Black conservative? I don't see color. Stop. There is a particular cultural and practical experience that we as Black conservatives face. And I think more and more people are trying to understand that. But of course, you still have the people who are saying, well, you're just like the Democrats. Everything is about race. And, it's like, come on, stop it. Deflect much. I mean, that becomes the issue in my view.
And Jeff, one of the things that we keep hearing about is the fact that, you can't, the whole aspect of being a Black Republican is oxymoronic from a conservative standpoint because we don't believe in race baiting. We don't believe in dividing the country based on race or cultural differences. But one of the pushbacks I've always had, and Priscilla, I'm going to go to you as well on this, is race has touched everything in American society always. Always. It's just, there's no two ways around that. It might be lessening in our modern times, but everything from state constitutions to the federal constitution to Supreme Court cases to a civil war to Jim Crow to redlining, every aspect of American society has been touched by race fundamentally and foundationally. And if anybody says that that's not the case, I'm just going to say, fight me on it. Show me the facts, because they're not there. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, but Lenny, you're saying that Republicans don't like to divide things by race or do identity politics. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. We love it. And you know what? I don't have a problem with it. I don't understand why we even deny it. Like, I'll see conservatives say, oh, I don't believe in identity politics. Oh, but do you support Black voices for Trump? Latinos for Trump? Yes. Okay. Then you're okay with identity politics. You know what? That's a good thing. I'm not even mad at it. There's a difference between doing identity politics in the way that the progressive left does it, which is destructive, which is designed to divide, specifically to divide Americans and cause racial tension, and then doing it in a way that just acknowledges that there are different types of people in America that might have different needs. A Black man coming up in Baltimore might have different needs than a white person coming up in Dime Box, Texas, a rural area. So, and it's okay to acknowledge that, as long as you're not using that as a political cudgel to beat your enemies with. So I think that we need to get out of this mode of thinking where I just said yesterday, and I keep saying this, when conservatives stop being so conditioned by the left, because we don't even know it's happening. We are so conditioned by the left to think that certain things only mean one thing. So if a person says I'm a black man on the left and they're progressive and they're pushing a race baiting narrative, that means that if somebody says I'm black but I'm a conservative, that we might be doing the same thing. We need to learn how to get out of that mode of thinking, because it doesn't always mean the same thing. You have to understand who the person is saying it.
Priscilla, one of the things that trips me out is, what is race baiting in a culture where race has always mattered? Race has always been a delineating factor. Race has always been something that has been able to indicate to people, generally speaking, where you probably live, where you probably went to school, how much money you probably made, and the like. I don't get how anybody, much less a conservative, can be race baiting if you're trying to leverage the Constitution, leverage the best of who we should be as a society in order to heal the racial dynamic that has plagued us for over 200 years.
Well, keep in mind, America is the least homogenous country in the world. And here's the thing, when we as Black conservatives have to convince white conservatives that we're legitimately and equally conservative, that's an issue, because to your point, that's a conditioning of Americans to assume, well, and this is the problem with the Democrats taking over the narrative that, well, they have the minority vote. So we have to work twice as hard to convince someone that we meet a new conservative who's white and we're like, oh, I'm a conservative, and they're suspect. That's an issue. So it's a conditioning of who we are that we have to, in this day and age, prove how conservative we really are. And I would love to see that change. I'd love for us to, how do we do that in a mass scale? Well, when we walk into a room and we might be the only person, are we saying Black or dark, whatever, conservative?
No, whoa. You don't get to confound those. First of all, those are my terms. Those are my delineations. You don't get to confound them. If you're going to use them, first of all, you have to pay a licensing fee. Second of all, after you do that, you got to differentiate, because a dark conservative probably is somebody, to this very valid point, that I'm going to get us out of the rabbit hole soon, because I want to talk about Biden's speech and guns and everything else. But a dark conservative is probably going to push further and further and further to the right, don't you think, Priscilla and the guys? Because you're trying to validate, I really am conservative. I'm so conservative that I'm going to go way to the right on every issue to prove that I am a conservative over being Black. Well, you might be able to say as a Black conservative, okay, look, I don't believe in, reparations, but how do I even out the issues of inequality on race in America? Well, it's probably going to be school choice. You're going to have to give people some type of opportunity. Affirmative action was brought about to try to level the playing field, not have quotas and get white people out of the way. You could argue those things as a conservative, but dark conservatives usually push the envelope, don't we think? Because they got to prove they're conservative, to Priscilla's point. Priscilla, back to you, in order to show they're conservative, but sometimes the Blackness gets lost into the sunken place. Yeah, no,
so going back to
like that. Go ahead.
About, as conservatives or as Republicans, do we consider race? Yeah, we do, because we've all been in those situations where we're amongst other white conservatives, and if we know that they're watching us and they're listening to us to see, are we really conservative? And that needs to change. And I think it is changing, but it takes us a little bit more time, because there's assumptions. People want to know before they put their faith and trust in us, even as candidates. We have to be vetted twice as long as a white conservative.
No, they don't know. See, I hate that narrative. Black people do not have to do stuff twice or three times as hard in America as other white people. Everybody's treated equally in this country. And I'm not going to tolerate anybody on this show saying that Black people have to do something different than white people or other people in this country, because America never does that.
I thought you were serious at first.
I know. Wait a minute, Lenny. That's not my lived experience. That's not my truth. Okay, I'm living my truth. I'm speaking my truth. Okay.
I lasted long enough, and Priscilla got real. She got real. You get the solo because she took. Go ahead, Priscilla. She took it real.
Okay, listen. I just want to say, it's fine because I know that we have been beat up so long as Republicans by the left, and the left has been bombarding the media and communities about who Black conservatives are, that it has created a lot of suspicion. But I'm here to say we are here, and we are here in mass numbers as minorities who are also conservatives. There are more of us than there are of them. And so if you see us in a room, come give us a hug and embrace us because we're safe.
But hold on. Let me say this though. I think the left has done that a lot. No lie. I mean, again, I've had my share of slurs hurled at me on live TV, live radio, with social media, dog poop thrown at my front door of my house.
Was it in your bed?
No, because I've never been married to Amber Heard or Johnny Depp. So there's that. And I would never be married to Johnny Depp just because that is not my persuasion at all. But I digress. You all can drink out of your coconut shells. You know, here's the thing though, right? There's an argument to be made, Jeff, that conservatives and Republicans, which sometimes are not the same thing, they vet and define Black conservatives and Republicans, who are also, again, not the same thing, more often than the left does, because you always get the vetting question of, don't you think Candace Owens is wonderful? Don't you think blank is fantastic? And that, regardless of what people think, that's a vetting question, because the moment you say no, or not really, or I disagree with this, then there's this aversion to, wait a minute, maybe you're not who I thought you were. I'll go back to an example that I brought up several years ago, which is, you know, economic isolationism and tariffs are not exactly in the vein of free markets that we've had in the last 70 years. Well, the moment I say that, you're not a real conservative. You go look up what economic conservatism has been for the last 100 years and how that's brought about military peace and dominance throughout the world, peace through strength, you know, winning a war without firing a weapon, you know, militarily, and then come speak at me. But people don't do that anymore. So there's something to be said about the R side vetting us in a different type of way as well, don't you think?
I think so too, even if they're not doing it overtly. And you actually, what you brought up, Lenny, was exactly what I was going to talk about. Because when it comes to Black conservatives, you never, like, certain types of Black conservatives will never, their conservatism will never be questioned because they're always saying what the base agrees with 100%. And I'm not saying that they don't believe these things too. I'm just saying that's just the nature of the beast, right? I mean, if you're saying all the right talking points and if you're saying, you know, the right opinions, that's not going to get questioned. It's when you start pushing back on some things, or so where if you start pushing back on some areas where the Republican Party is getting it wrong. Not necessarily on policy, but maybe it's on messaging. Maybe it's on the way that we approach things. That's when people start to think, oh, or some people actually believe it. Some people are just lying, but others start to say, oh, well, now your conservatism is suspect. That's where that vetting comes in, because they may not ask you how you feel about Candace Owens or Brandon Tatum or Larry Elder or whomever. But if you push back on things that they say, then that's when the dishonest ones will be like, oh, well, you're not a real conservative. And honestly, when people have asked me that question, or if I voice agreement, I've had plenty of white conservatives ask me, oh, well, why do you feel that way? And then I'll explain it. And they may not even agree, but now they've got a different point of view and they understand better where we're coming from. So I do want to give them some credit too, because I've had that happen a lot. But I do think that this is just something natural that's going to happen since we do have more diverse Black conservative voices out there. So I think it's a little bit to be expected. And I think it is bringing about a paradigm shift where the base is saying, okay, you don't necessarily have to agree with everything that these people say to be Black and a conservative. There's just different viewpoints.
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of that is, of course, usually it gets confusing for them too, because, you know, they go around and they look up on their screens and 2 out of every 3 Black conservative men wear the same exact shirt on a Saturday morning. So, I mean, they don't usually see that. It's a joke, everybody. Play along.
It's diversity of thought, not diversity of clothing.
Well, there
Right.
you go. There's
Exactly.
a difference. But let me dig on the diversity point. I know we're going down a rabbit hole. This might end up being the bonus episode. And if it is the bonus episode, then surprise, welcome to another bonus episode. But Dr. Metzer, it kind of goes back to the first bonus episode we had last week in regards to Black Republicanism and Black conservatism versus dark conservatism, which is there is an obligation to be thought leaders, to be diverse, to bend the arc of history and policy and politics in a better direction. And to Jeff's point, that's where all the animus and the rubbing the wrong way comes in, is when you see that dynamic come into place. When you say, no, we're wrong on issues of race based on this. We're wrong on economic policy based on that. No, economic isolationism is not going to help the Black community, because if African Americans are disproportionately found in the manufacturing sector, and we need to make sure that we have good trade exporting our goods, we cannot damage that dynamic by way of, you know, tariffs that will damage relationships around the world. We need to be in other type of trade agreements so that the goods that are sold from Erie, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, you know, Detroit, Michigan, get shipped overseas, whether it's the Pacific Rim or to Western Europe. I mean, we're supposed to be making those arguments and pulling in geoeconomics to the hood. And if we're not doing that, then what the hell are we there for?
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right on that. And I want to go back in that vein to something that Jeff put brilliantly, as it relates to the left and as it relates to the use of language on the left. What so many conservatives have done is essentially taken that language, that very language that they're supposed to despise, and that is the same vector through which many of them are looking at Black conservatives. It's absolutely amazing to me that they can't see that that is exactly what they're doing. And as it relates, you know, as it relates to conservatism, I mean, so, you know, for folks to say to me, well, you know, you're not conservatives. Okay, I'm still waiting for the number of you who are so-called conservatives. How many of the last presidential administrations, which were led by conservatives, have you worked in? I still haven't got a response to that. When you respond, I'll tell you how many I've worked on. So there's that aspect of it as well. Look, Black conservatives have an obligation. And I think that obligation is to, as you said, Lenny, bring the transformation into the hood, so to speak. However, there is so much noise right now that we're not able to do that in an effective way, in addition to which too many of us have gone over to conservative ink. That concerns me greatly. A lot of the messages that you're hearing from these folks, that's not conservatism. Those are talking points. And those are modern day talking points. Now, Candace is on this thing about she is investigating, and she's going to do a documentary on why Caribbean Blacks are more successful than American Blacks. And she gives, and then she says, I am of St. Thomas descent. Well, actually, what you would say, if you were real about it, is that you was a Tomian. May I hear you say that? What I heard you say is you are of that descent. So there you go.
Well, she's good because she's from the St. Thomas Projects in Hartford, Connecticut. That's what she meant.
That's what she meant.
That's what you did. That's what you missed. Not the island.
I missed that.
Yeah,
I missed.
You know, and honestly, I would actually, I'd be okay with it if I thought it was going to be like an honest conversation about it. But I know with people like her, it's not going to be. It's going to be the usual talking points that we've already been using for decades that tell part of the story, but not all of it. But I do like that conversation because there's so much to it. But you know that she's only going to do like a sliver of what the actual truth is.
But that's not. But doesn't that go to the point that we're talking about, right? Again, Black conservatives are supposed to, I think we have a higher obligation to solve things. We're positioned differently. Ergo, we have to solve things. First of all, Black folks are the only non-swing vote that you have in the United States. We've heard about working whites. We've heard about soccer moms. We've heard about the Latino vote. We've heard about the Asian American vote. We've heard about the business vote. We've heard about the Jewish vote. We've heard about the Catholic vote. We have a Catholic president that's pro-choice. We have a pro-choice Catholic that's Speaker of the House, but then Catholics are supposed to be pro-life. It's always a swing vote, because I'd have to imagine that more Catholics voted for Biden than you would have probably had under, let's say, I don't know, let's go back to Clinton, right? So that's a swing vote. The only dynamic that's not a swing vote is the African-American vote. And if you say swing with Black folks, it's swung from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party in one big block. That's it. Yeah. So as Black Republicans, there's an obligation to be a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more nuanced politically, a little bit more savvy from a policy standpoint, which, by the way, Priscilla, is another thing that we don't really do that well, which begs the question, is it going to take a Black conservative wonk, a Black conservative nerd to help swing the tide? And you can make the argument that that should have been, you know, Walter Williams could have been Thomas Sowell. Didn't happen. But what's it going to take to really help swing that pendulum? What type of figure or movement is it going to take to really get more African Americans at a significant number? And I'm not talking about, you know, the 500 people that they gave free hats to and stuck into the White House. I'm talking about your average African American family that says, I'm going to really look at that DeSantis Gillum race in 2018. I'm going to really look at that Abrams Kemp race in 2022, because I'm a pro school choice father, mother. I'm a business person, and I want to hear both of them. We don't really hear that conversation anywhere near as much as we should.
Well, this is where I get to insert my Alan West conversation about the article we talked about last.
Name dropper.
By the way, Colonel West did say that I could just call him Alan. So I'm going to refer to him as Alan because we have that kind of relationship now. Yeah.
Name dropper, I'm out.
Don't be jelly. So the conversation around Black conservatives that are running, he said this is definitely an awakening, but he did encourage us to run for local offices instead of going. We say 0 to 60. He's like, we've been going 0 to 80, thinking we can go from never having run for an office to running for president of the United States or Senate, you know? So starting at the school board level, that's where we are going to make a significant difference, because we keep talking about education and the disparity in our community. Why aren't more Black moms and dads running for school board to make a change in their local government? That's where we need to start encouraging our community to get involved. And that's what it's going to take, because our voices need to be in the room. We have solutions. The solutions are not far reaching, but that conversation of, hey, making sure we're talking about equity, what does that look like? I see this every day as a school teacher, where the leftists, they're telling us what they think equity looks like, and equality and diversity and inclusion. And none of these policies have resulted in fixing the problem. In fact, there are so many places, especially in our urban areas, where the disparities are bigger. The gaps are larger. Our students are not reading and writing at a proficient level. And it's been under decades and decades of leftist policies and ideologies that have damaged us. And I'm here to say no more. I'm here to encourage more Black parents, Hispanic parents, Asian parents, run for school board so that you can start to turn this Titanic. Because if we don't, we are going to continue to be low on the global scale. There are countries way ahead of us in K-12 education. They're smarter than our kids. They're more proficient. They're the ones creating a lot of the things that we're buying. They're, you know, making movements in the space industry and the STEM industry. So where are we? Where are our voices? So that's what it's going to take. I'm encouraged, but it's going to take more and more conversations, encouraging people who never saw themselves as being politically involved to say this isn't really necessarily politics. When you're talking about your local government and your local voice, it's about we the people, the republic that we are guaranteed to have, and educating people on what that civic engagement really truly looks like. It's not just a protest at a BLM rally. That doesn't move the needle. What moves the needle is having voices that are in either quasi-legislative positions or in local legislative positions to actually make systemic change and right the wrongs that have been done to our people.
But Jeff, we've had that before. We've had Black people in elected office, Republican or Democrat, for 100 years. I mean, at a steady pace, probably since the 60s, so 60 years. But I mean, you can go as far back as Reconstruction. There's a period of time, then a law, then you started seeing Black people start getting elected in northern cities in like the 30s and 40s. And then you really saw the dam break in the 60s. And look at where we are right now. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made that it's not necessarily being elected. I guess the question I'm asking is, what type of policy leadership, and this is really what I want to drive home at, is what type of policy leadership from an African-American perspective, and then for us, from a Black Republican, Black conservative perspective, is going to make a difference to allow there to be this sea change where, you know, from a cultural standpoint, we're more relevant. Two, because we're relevant anyway, but more relevant. From an economic and geopolitical perspective, we're more active and more involved and more empowered. And then from a political standpoint, we're no longer taken for granted.
You know, I'm going to piggyback off of something that Priscilla said. I mean, I think that, it's great that we have 81 people running for Congress, but the focus needs to be local and at the state level. I would honestly rather see 81 Black or Republicans running for mayor, for city council, or even for state legislature. I would rather see that than the federal level. I mean, the federal level, we can get there, but that's what we always focus on because that's more sexy. But I think that we need to focus on the local, and I think it's going to take Black conservatives who actually have an affinity for the culture and a connection to the culture. I think a lot of the people that we have out here, I'm sure a lot of them do have a connection to Black areas, but a lot seem not to. So we do have to have. I'm not just talking.
Hold on. We've all been to KFC before. Is that not enough to prove that you're Black?
No. You have to go to Popeyes.
Well, I was going to say Popeyes.
Popeyes. Wait,
yeah.
KFC.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just, I mean, I'm an older Black
red beans and rice.
I'm going back to the KFC days.
How about Chick-fil-A?
No.
Oh,
that's from Atlanta and from the South. Same thing with Bojangles.
Yeah. No, but what I was,
Church's chicken.
Okay,
Church's chicken.
Well, hold on. Church's chicken is owned by the Klan, from what the urban myth from 30 years ago is. So
I forgot about that. No, but I mean, we need Black conservatives who have a connection to the community. And I'm not just talking about the hood, because everybody thinks I'm talking about the hood when I say that. No, that's a part of it. You need Black people who can relate to the hood, to Black people living in suburbs and wherever else. I mean, and it doesn't seem like we have a lot of that. But when you have people running at the local level, you do have that. Like I always bring up Jalen Johnson. I mean, he won his seat for city. I think it was like commissioner. I can't remember the local office off the top of my head. 70% Black area. He ran as conservative. He didn't really put up the Republican thing because it was considered a nonpartisan race. But he won on conservative values. That's what he sold, and he has a very deep connection with his community. So that's where I think we should really be focusing. We should be focusing, and I'm not knocking Byron Donalds because I like Byron Donalds, but I think we should focus more on creating more Jalen Johnsons than Byron Donalds right now.
What role does Black conservative social media, which sounds like a whole lot of dissections, but it exists, what obligation is there to prop up folks like that? I mean, Sonny Johnson's been doing a great job on XM radio, and one of the things that she does is she actually tries to open doors. I know that, you know, when I had my radio show in Chicago, one of the things I tried to do was represent a wide range of Black political thought, and I would put a Dr. Metzler with a Charles Ellison, with an Olivia Benson. You know, one's a Democratic strategist, one's a former Newt Gingrich staffer that ended up going towards the center, and then Dr. Metzler, who's worked in Republican administrations. And basically, let's have a discussion. You know, what role does Black conservative media, and again, I'm using Black more broadly, not Black versus dark, because a lot of the Black social media is dark conservative media, social media. But what's the obligation there? Because I know, but the bottom line is it goes into the sunken place. It is part of the empire, and it has no hope for the future. It just doesn't. It's destructive. It's like a black hole where just thought and decency go to die. So let's just be honest with it, right? And anybody that thinks that I'm not true, go read one of their timelines and see how long it takes for you to either want to throw up on your shoes or go get an Excedrin for the headache that you're going to get. It's toxic, it's nasty, it's horrible, and they destroy the country. They're not building up anything other than their bank accounts. And that doesn't even last very long, because eventually they do something stupid and blow themselves up because they're fools, generally speaking. If you really wanted to know my opinion, which usually I don't give it here. But I digress, because I love everybody. I don't like fools that get in the way of people having productive lives. They kill people with their toxicity, like literally end up getting people killed. Okay, now that we got that out of my system, what's the obligation?
Yeah, you had something you had to get off your chest.
I've been saying it for 15 years, and, you know, people hate me for it, but it proves to be deeper and deeper with the truth the more I say it. What's the obligation for Black conservative social media to prop up the right examples of the Black wonk, the Black media personality, the Black politician, the Black policymaker, the Black ambassador between the community policymakers and the PR machine? What's the obligation for a Jeff Charles, for a Priscilla Ron, for a Christopher Metzler?
Well, I think the obligation, I think, is clear. And I think it's part of the reason that, you know, we discuss a lot of these issues on Red and Black. I think it's important that we have, in fact, Black conservatives. And I do agree that it is the local level that we really need to focus on, largely because that is where the most significant impact happens. It ain't coming out of Washington. Those folks are in Congress. They're not passing any significant bills that's dealing with my daily life. However, at the local level, at the state level, that's where those things are affecting my life. And so I do believe we have an obligation to put forth diverse Black conservative voices. Again, I go back to the fact that we're not a monolith, but people just want to decide what that mold of Black conservatives should be.
It's funny that you say we're not a monolith, and I'm looking at a screen with the two of you dressed the same exact way. It's kind of hard to make that argument dressed that way.
Glasses, peach. Yeah.
I know.
Except I'm not in the islands.
Well, that's because when you're told to be there at 7 o'clock sharp, or else you're going to be left.
Yeah.
You miss out.
Yeah, y'all should have known better with that.
Right.
No, I would say, but in answer to your question, though, I would say that those of us who do have platforms can use them to elevate certain types of Black thinkers and provide a wider diversity of thought. Even on my channel, A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, my podcast, my YouTube channel, most of my interviews are actually with Black people. and it's funny because I realized that I was like, I need to do a little reverse affirmative action here and get some more white people. but most of my interviews are with other Black people who are giving different points of view on different things. And I think that doing those types of things can expose the base to more diversity of thought. So I think anybody who has a platform, I don't even care if it's a smaller platform, if you can use it to prop up voices, even if you don't agree with them 100%, you can use it to prop up other types of Black conservative thoughts so that people are more exposed. I think it's already happening, Lenny. This is already happening. I mean, alternative media has really provided an avenue for that, even at Red State. I mean, Red State is probably the most diverse conservative news outlet. And that was done on purpose with Kira Davis so that audience can get exposed to different views from different types of Black conservatives. So I think it's happening. I would like to see it happen faster, but I think that those are some things that we can do.
Priscilla, you dropped Alan West's name dropper, and then Jeff comes back and dropped Kira Davis's name dropper. So it's your turn now. Do you want to one up him and comment to what he just said and maybe even name drop so you can go up 2-1?
My husband Darren Ron is performing tonight with Biff Gore from season 6 of The Voice at the Western Conservative Summit Armstrong Awards dinner.
Priscilla's gonna be drinking her tea with her pinky up tonight.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something and then I forgot, and it was really good.
Wait a minute, you can't admit that you forgot. You're married to the guy.
No, because well, no. Okay, so just to answer your question, yes, I think it is very important that we lift each other up and help each other. Like we got the OG Dr. Metzler here, who's working with us and mentoring us, and he's been in the room. And so we need to share the love. We can't be selfish with our knowledge and our experiences. It's all a part of letting our light shine and bringing up the next generation, especially the youth, and saying, hey, we want you to speak. That's why we have all these wonderful youth competitions and speeches and inviting them into the room. This is how we continue to grow the conservative movement. I don't care what color you are, but we know that it's been more challenging for us as Black conservatives because we traditionally haven't been in those rooms to have a bigger voice and to have access to networks like Red State. So I think there is an obligation to spread this voice and to uplift candidates and to teach them this world of politics, because it's not just about, oh, now I remember. I think I remember what I forgot what he said. I'll come back when I remember what he said. It's early in the morning. I'm sorry.
First of all, we got to get out of here anyway, because this bonus episode has gone along and we're going to talk about some other relevant things. Number 2, you noticed that all Priscilla really worried about was winning the name dropping thing. She's like, oh, hell no, I can't believe you tied me 1-1 and I'm married to a Grammy nominated artist. Watch me just mic drop this real quick on this. So, Jeff, you lost twice. First, you missed the boat out to the island. Then you got beat in the name dropping competition. I'm gonna give you the last word. How do you make up for this?
Well, I'm never gonna win the name dropping. I mean, when Dr. Metzler's on the panel, I'm never going to win the name dropping contest. I mean, it's just that's unfair. That's like having a kitten fight a lion. It's just not right.
And Jeff, you lost 3 times because I tried to set you up and redeem you. When I said, how do you make up for this? Your line was, the way to make up for this is you should like, share, and subscribe to the Red State channel and follow us on Red and Black every week. I tried to set you up. I tried to throw the Magic Johnson no-look alley-oop. You're supposed to be like Byron Scott back in the 80s, catch it and dunk it with little tighty-whitey shorts on, and no. You missed the dunk. You missed the layup. You got slammed to the ground by Kevin McHale. The Celtics beat you up again.
Hey, I remember now what I was going to say. Okay, this is really good nugget. Alan said that we should be more statesmen and not politicians. That's what he said. Okay, that's what I remembered. Very important distinction between being a politician and being a statesman, because a statesman brings solutions to problems. Not about power, because a politician is about power.
Dr. Metzler's not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. Jeff doesn't even know why we're not saying anything.
I think I do.
We know why we're not saying anything. But we're going to go ahead and go.
Right is right, no matter who it comes from.
We're going to continue this conversation. We'll give you another bonus episode. Like, share, subscribe here on the Red State channel. We appreciate you and all that you do. We'll catch up to you soon. TCNGB. Take care and God bless. Peace.